Els organitzadors m'han demanat que us presenti una mica en Colin Nugent, que és la meva atleta, que és de l'Agència Europea de Medi Ambient, abans que faci la seva ponència. Llavors, molt content per no oblidar-me de res, o sigui que ho llegiré una miqueta. En Colin es va graduar a la Universitat de Gestio, al nord d'Irlanda, en ciències ambientals i especialitat en salut ambiental. Va cursar també un postgrau en control de la contaminació acústica, justament a l'Institut d'Acústica del Regne Unit, i és d'on ha estat un membre associat des de l'any 1996. Des que es va graduar, va treballar durant 16 anys en el camp de la salut ambiental a escala local, regional i també nacional. I es va especialitzar en diverses disciplines, però particularment en qualitat de l'aire i contaminació acústica. Ell va ser el responsable de transposar i implementar la directiva europea sobre avaluació i gestió del soroll ambiental al nord d'Irlanda, completant també els primers mapes estratègics de soroll per aquest país l'any 2007. M'ha explicat que va ser una gran sorpresa per ell saber que havien estat els primers mapes enviats a la Comissió Europea d'aquesta directiva. Aquesta experiència el va portar a continuar la seva feina en contaminació acústica a nivell europeu i l'any 2008 va entrar a treballar per l'Agència Europea de Medi Ambient a Dinamarca, on em va esdevenir al cap de projecte de tots els temes relacionats amb contaminació acústica. So, Colin, welcome to Catalunya. We are very happy that you are able to join us in the first Catalan Congress, and we hope that you enjoy your stay. So we hope to see you again very soon, and the floor is yours.
Gracias, Nuria. Gracias, Nuria. Bon dia a tothom. I hope you don't mind that I addressed this Congress this morning in English, and I will try to speak as clearly as I can. As an Irishman who lives in Denmark, it was very exciting for me to travel to Catalonia. This week I was expecting to receive some much needed sunshine that I haven't seen for some time. However, when I stepped out to the streets of Sabadell this morning, there was something very familiar about the weather that greeted me. But I'm quite sure that the city of Sabadell, the mayor, and the organisers of Acusticat will arrange that weather especially for me so that I could feel it at home today. So thank you for that. It is a true pleasure to be here today, the first Catalan Congress on Acoustics, held in conjunction with the 21st anniversary of International Noise Awareness Day. And I very much look forward to the opportunity to perhaps be gathered here for the 21st anniversary of the Catalan Acoustics Congress. So I wish you well with your new venture on that. My job here today is to tell you about noise at a European level, what's happening in terms of managing environmental noise. I thought that perhaps as an introduction to that I should explain clearly who it is that I work for. I find that I travel to many congresses and events, and many people assume that I work for the European Commission. It's not quite entirely true, so I hope to explain who it is that I work for. I actually work for the European Environment Agency. So we are an agency of the European Union, but we are one step removed from the Commission. We're an independent agency, not an executive agency. So we do have a lot of power of our own to make our own assessments and make some suggestions about what could be improved in the politics of noise in Brussels. As you can see from our mission statement, the key thing about what it is we do is we have to gather reliable information that helps inform the politicians in Brussels about what it is they need to do for noise. And a lot of that information comes not from a European level, but at a local level, from people like you, people who are doing actions on noise at a very local level. So I think that's a very important point for today's Congress. My agency is not based in Brussels either. We're based in Copenhagen. This is our office in Congres Català in Copenhagen, Denmark. It's a very touristic area of the city, so if you're ever in Copenhagen on holiday, do call in and say hello. You will be very welcome. My agency not only covers the European Union, but we also have member countries from outside the European Union as well. You can see here from this graphic that we actually have 39 member and cooperating countries around Europe. We also have an additional agreement with Greenland to cooperate on waste-related issues and Arctic issues. So 40 countries that we work with around Europe. How we interact with those countries, we use a network that's known as the IONET, the European Environmental Information and Observation Network. We have meetings at least once per year with representatives from each of the countries that are involved with the agency. How the IONET actually works is, if you can look at the schema, you see that it's composed of a national focal point in each country. So that's one person, perhaps in the ministry or the Environmental Protection Agency, who is the one contact point for my agency in that country. For thematic experts then, we have national reference centres. So we will have one national reference centre in each country who specialises in air quality, another on waste, and then another on noise, for instance. So those are the key experts then that work with me in relation to the data. It's not just about the countries, and it's not just about the ministries that are involved in this, but we also have what are known as ETCs, or European Topic Centres. These are consortiums of specialist organisations that present specific skills in relation to research or specific thematic expertise on noise, for instance, that help us work with the scientific issues we must struggle with to make our assessments available to Brussels. So that's essentially how the IONET works. You can see a photograph of one of the IONET meetings for noise held a couple of years ago. In fact, 3 years back, we had the IONET workshop for noise in Barcelona. Our hosts were the Generalitat de Catalunya, and we were very grateful for that opportunity to bring that workshop to Barcelona, and perhaps we can do that in the future again too. How the European Topic Centre that deals with noise works, well, it's known as the Topic Centre on Air and Climate Mitigation. Noise is not mentioned in the title, but I guess when you compete against air and climate issues, it's difficult to get your name into the title. But nonetheless, that is the consortium that deals with noise issues. It's composed of 14 key institutions around Europe. The consortium is led by the RIVM Institute from the Netherlands. That's the Dutch Environmental Health Research Institute. But you can see highlighted in red, you do have a local organisation that plays a very key role in relation to this. It is the Autonomous University of Barcelona. And I think you can be very proud of the work they do. The key team at the university who helps us with the data is presented here. You can see from left to right, Maria Jose, Francisco, Jaume, Mikel, and last but not least, Duria, who introduced me this morning. And I think at least 4 of those people are here this morning, so you can say hello to them later today. So they do very good work for us locally in Catalonia. So the Catalan Congress can be sure that you are playing a role in the European development of noise policy. The reason that's so important is that noise is a major environmental issue in Europe, and it's addressed by the drivers that push forward European environmental policy. And the key driver at the moment is the 7th Environment Action Programme of the European Union. It sets out the work that will be done by the European Union up until 2020, so just a few years from now. And it does carry a very key target in relation to environmental noise. You can see that I have taken an extract of it here. And essentially, the European Union is aiming to significantly reduce noise pollution by 2020. So that's a very key challenge, and you need lots of information to be able to help inform you on the way to that target, but also when you plan to reach that target too. You can also see that there are some ambitions to draw the legislation and the assessments much closer to the latest scientific evidence. So much of the law that we're working with in Europe today is based upon scientific research from the 1980s and the 1990s, when in fact we now know an awful lot more about the health impacts of noise, we know an awful lot more about the scale of the problem in Europe. So I think the aim of the Environmental Action Programme is to bring the new scientific evidence to meet the law. So it's a very ambitious target. The main legislative driver for doing that is the Environmental Noise Directive. It has a complicated title, but it's commonly known as the Environmental Noise Directive. And I see the formatting of my slide has changed slightly, so you cannot see the title clearly. I'm sorry about that. But it's commonly known as the END. And if during my presentation this morning I mentioned the END or the END, then I hope you know what I'm referring to. I do find that in my job, acronyms are something I have to get a real handle on very, very quickly, so you may hear a few of those this morning. The key aim of the directive is to improve our acoustic environment. It's to try and reduce the harmful effects. And it does that with some key objectives. It introduces a requirement for noise mapping. I've highlighted those key objectives for you here. After the noise mapping, action plans are required to try and reduce the noise exposure where it is found to be high. But not only that, it's to try and ensure that where we find noise quality is good, what is referred to in English in the directive as quiet areas, that those are protected for future generations so that future noise impact does not impact those areas. So it's quite an ambitious piece of legislation too. And how that is introduced then across Europe is in relation to sources, very generalized as major airports and major cities, and then also major roads and major railways. You can see the thresholds that were introduced over 2 phases of the directive's introduction. The first being in 2007 for noise mapping and action planning, the most recent being in 2012 for noise mapping and action planning. A key thing to note is that it mainly addresses transport sources in the cities. Industrial noise is also included as a key source for noise mapping and action planning. So, how do we get the data to help us make our European level assessments? How do we find out about the work that you're doing at a local level in Catalonia, for instance? Well, with the Autonomous University of Barcelona, we developed a reporting mechanism, a model that can be used for delivering the information that we need to know at a European level. We called it the Electronic Noise Data Reporting Mechanism, or the ENDRM. And what you're looking at here is an overview data model of how this works. You can see it's divided up into the different sources and agglomerations. We look for key information about where the sources are located and the exposure data related to those, but also the noise maps, the contour maps themselves related to those sources. All in all, building up a picture of environmental noise in Europe. This reporting mechanism is integrated into the European Environment Agency's e-reporting system, called ReportNet. It's a way in which member states can deliver their information electronically to the European Environment Agency. This greatly speeds up the process of exchanging information. A key advantage of such a method of delivering noise maps is that we can conduct an automatic quality check in the system as soon as the data is delivered. In other words, we can identify whether any key pieces of information are perhaps missing in those data sets, and that information is communicated to the person in the country almost immediately that there might be a problem if there is one. What happens after that with the information is that with the help of the Autonomous University of Barcelona, we conduct a quality check, then a manual quality check of the information. Does the information look right for a city of that size? Is the exposure greater than the population stated for the city, for instance, or do the numbers make sense, in other words? And also, has the information been delivered? Because, of course, we have pressure from the European Commission to understand if a country has actually implemented the legislation and done the noise mapping and action planning that they are supposed to do. So the European Commission is very keenly interested in this quality checking process. What I'm showing you here is an extract from the Noise in Europe report from 2014. I will explain that a little bit more later. But the key thing about this graphic is to understand for cities, or agglomerations as they are called in the directive, what we expect versus what we get is a very key statistic. You can see on the left, here we indicate how many cities we expect for each reporting round. The threshold changes, so in the second reporting round we expect almost 500 cities data. But you can see if you look across the sources to the right and get to the very end of the graphic, you can see that we still don't have all of the information that we expect, even from the first round of noise mapping due in 2007. And that creates a real problem if you're trying to build a true picture of environmental noise in Europe and to fully inform the politicians of Brussels based upon very gappy information. So a key thing with the local university is to try and assess those data gaps and perhaps then fill them in a little bit. The report that I just mentioned is the Noise in Europe Report 2014. It was launched at an event in Florence in Italy, a QuadMap Congress. Some of you may have been at that event in Florence, and it was very well received when it was first published. I was amazed by the media interest at the time. And I think environmental noise is one of those issues that does capture the media's attention very readily. I think it makes a very refreshing change from climate change and energy-related issues, which are very dominant in the media. So I think we're very pleased with the uptake in relation to that. It finished the year as a top story in a key environmental journal around Europe. But what I remind everyone about this report, and there are copies available for you at reception. I've left some there today and some other key publications by my agency, so please feel free to pick one up, or indeed visit the URLs that were contained in my presentation, and I'm sure you can have access to those later. But when you look at this information, you find that it's up to date for all the information we received to August 2013. Next year we will improve upon that. The key messages are that road traffic noise is the most dominant source in Europe. 1 in 4 people exposed above the 55 dB required by the LBN. These are some of the health impacts that we were able to calculate from that. The impacts on humans, the annoyance level, the sleep disturbance level, and the hospitalization numbers associated with environmental noise in Europe. Ultimately, we estimate that this causes at least 10,000 premature deaths from environmental noise in Europe each year in Europe. These statistics apply only to the adult population because the dose-effect relations are only proven for adults. But it's interesting to note that in terms of aircraft noise, we estimate that at least 8,000 school children in Europe suffer reading impairment because their schools are close to major airports. So it's a very serious issue in Europe indeed. I mentioned that we have GAPI data. What you're looking at here is essentially, I beg your pardon, the inside cities information and the outside of cities information for each source. You cannot add all of the information together because of the way it's reported to us, but you could, for instance, add together road and road data inside and outside the city and get an accurate picture of that. But I would not add individual sources together. In green, you have the information reported to my agency for 2012 noise maps. In grey is what we estimate to be the true picture, the statistics I just showed you. So there is a huge gap between the information that's making its way to me in Copenhagen and what's being done at a local level. And I would encourage everyone in this Congress to ensure that all of the data you do in your noise mapping and action planning makes it to the Ministry that communicates that to me and the European Commission to fill those gaps. So moving quickly through the report, you will find that there are key statistics on cities. I've chosen just roads. You can see the Spanish data right here. A little bit above average exposure in Europe, I would say. I will move quickly due to time. You can also then look at the report in more detail for cities. The Spanish cities are here. At the time of publication, we did not have any information from Catalonia. That situation has changed. So in the next report that you see from my agency on environmental noise, there will be information on Catalonia there. It does not necessarily mean that the city on the left, Mostores, is any noisier than Alicante, for instance. I think a key point to understand here is that the methods of assessment may actually be different from one city, one region, and one country to another. So making direct comparisons is something you should take great care with. Another key publication from the European Environment Agency is our State of the Environment report. And the reason this is important is this is what informs the European Environment Action Programme, whether it's meeting its targets. And if you just look at some of the key statistics we presented on that for capital cities in Europe, what's missing really is a match-up with the guidelines. The World Health Organization sets some very stringent guidelines for Europe. And you can see that we are unable to make assessments to the night noise guideline, which is 40 decibels. We simply don't get information to that low. The requirement in the legislation is for 50 decibels all night. So what you see here is a line marking the exposure and the percentage of the cities to the interim target presented by the World Health Organization, not the actual guideline. The interim target is 55 dB all night. So you can see a very key reason why the legislation needs to match the scientific evidence. To mark International Noise Awareness Day, we published some country fact sheets. Some of those are printed and available for you at reception if you wish to take one. You can also follow the link that I have here. These are summaries of the key data reported to my agency up to June last year, so a little bit more up to date than the report you have just seen. So I would encourage you to follow that and look at those for International Noise Awareness Day. This is a reference to our online map viewer database. You can interrogate the END data for major airports, as you see here. This is the URL to follow. You can also look at cities, you can look at country level, and of course you will be tempted to make comparisons, but please remember the point I made about the assessment methods being different. The other thing you notice, there's a lot of gaps. Again, that highlights how much information is missing. Black means we don't have it yet. You can zoom into cities. This is one not far from here, Valencia, and you can see the noise contour maps. These noise contour maps are particularly interesting because they are from multiple sources, at least road and rail assessments done together. If you want to know more, you can download the data by accessing our Excel and Access database online. And you can also gain access to noise viewers for local and regional level if you wish to look at those regions in more detail. So I would encourage you to have a look at this database. So what are people doing about this? What are they doing in action plans? It's very difficult at a European level to assess this. In the report you will see some information like this which tries to break down the measures that are listed in action plans. Please follow that, please have a look. My agency also tries to help competent authorities like you at a local level to achieve its action planning goals, but also to manage quiet areas. And a couple of years ago we published some good practice guide on quiet areas to try and encourage the uptake of this problem. I think what we were finding in the IONET network is that many people are struggling to deal with the quiet areas issue. So this offers some guidance on perhaps how that could be done. And I would recommend that you follow this. Quiet areas are also important because very soon we will publish a report in relation to quiet areas in Europe. This is an assessment conducted by the Autonomous University in Barcelona on behalf of my agency to try and identify, using the END data, but also urban data, industrial data, and land use data, to identify which areas in Europe might be free of noise, which areas in Europe should probably be protected against noise, outside of cities, of course, because we haven't addressed quiet areas in cities yet with that assessment. We've called it the Quietness Suitability Index. You can see that red is unsuitable to be declared as quiet, but green and blue certainly has a lot of potential for declaration as quiet. Why it's interesting is that you can combine this with information on other European legislation, such as legislation to protect biodiversity, because noise not only affects you and me, but it also affects wildlife and biodiversity too. And by using this information, you can also identify sensitive wildlife areas that might be suffering from noise, but also sensitive wildlife areas that are quiet and need to be protected even further. These are some of the key statistics for Europe, which you will access in the report when it's published. I will skip through this for time. This is a breakdown of how the countries do in terms of the share of quiet areas against protected areas. Spain perhaps doesn't have so much compared to other areas, but you can see some of the northern European countries have tremendous potential for quiet. Again, noise is directly linked to population density from that perspective. This is the quiet area assessment for your country. You can see that Catalonia does offer a lot of respite for noise. There are many areas that are green and blue that you can retreat to. I will show you where you can access this report to interrogate the data more. This is the Spanish data with accessibility to quiet areas also listed. So I would encourage you to look at that data a little bit more, and perhaps it will help your actions at a local level. This publication is planned for next month, May of this year. If it slips by a week or two, please forgive me, but it will be published before the summer, I can assure you. This is a draft cover proposal only, so if my director doesn't like this photograph, it won't look like that, so please note that as well. Just to highlight some other things, we do have a European Soundscape Award that we issue to projects at the local level. I would encourage you to look at this. One of the previous winners has recently, yesterday for International Noise Awareness Day, just developed this website that presents a publication that helps design public spaces in terms of acoustics. I haven't yet had a chance to look at it in detail because it was only published yesterday, but I would encourage you to have a look at it and see if this could be helpful in your job in tackling noise in Europe. One more thing to mention before I leave you is that my agency has looked at other ways of gathering data. We developed a citizen science tool some years ago which uses mobile technology to gather noise data. When launched in 2011, I was very unsure about whether people would use this. But this slide shows you that the world woke up to noise using our NoiseWatch app. We have almost 300,000 ratings delivered to the system over 3 years. And you can see it's not just Europe that people are using, it's all over the world. In fact, to highlight how well it can be used, International Noise Awareness Day last year in Catalonia, you used it and you delivered the data to my agency. It's a tremendous tool for awareness raising. I'm not certain yet about whether every decibel level can be trusted on a mobile device, but what can be trusted are the source tags that the people are adding to it. And a key thing to look at here is, no surprises, road traffic noise is dominant. But if you look at the near 300,000 ratings, it's surprising to see that industry comes second. So perhaps not quite tallying with the Environmental Noise Directive data, which shows that industry is one of the lowest sources of impact. So I would encourage you to look at this. My agency no longer supports the Noise Watch publication, so resources are tightening all the time. This was deemed as experimental. I was not permitted to continue it, but it may be reawoken in the near future, and I will tell you if that does happen. Some key things to end with. The END. Is it the end of noise policy in Europe, or is it the beginning? I think people are wondering if it's the end because there is a refit being conducted by the Commission. The directive has been looked at in a very serious way. Do we need it anymore? Is essentially what they're asking. It's called a refit, and many other environmental legislation are doing it. To me, that could be a potential threat to noise policy in Europe. However, the Commission published its Knossos directive last year. It will enter into force in 2018. I think that will be a very key measure in trying to level the playing field in noise assessment in Europe. They're also now beginning to look at the Annex 3 of the END, the harmful effects. So work is continuing, so perhaps the refit will not be as bad as some people do think. A key thing that will happen this year, and you should look out for this, is 2009 they published the night noise guidelines, but the WHO, the World Health Organization, will publish its new community guidelines this year. So that will be another very key driver for noise policy in the very near future. We expect noise maps again next year from all over the countries. Another key point to note, will that help us inform the 7th Environment Action Programme to significantly reduce noise in Europe by 2020? I guess we just have to wait and see and keep our fingers crossed. But what I want to finish on is that this is all about improving the knowledge base. That's what my job is. And it's not at a European level that I can actually do that. It's down to people like you. It's down to people at a local level who play a very key role in helping inform me to help inform the politicians of Brussels. And for that reason, I very much welcome this Congress. And I wish you well in your efforts over the coming days, but also in your careers in environmental noise. And thank you again for the very key opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Si hi ha alguna pregunta, en 2 minutets, perquè anem una mica tard.